This conference will now be recorded.
So with this sexual assault talk of 2018, I have also included some important points from strategy. So then you don't have to add anything from the strategy or read anything from the strategy. Okay. So what is the meaning or what is the definition of sexual violence according to WHO? It is any sexual act, attempt to obtain an sexual act, unwanted sexual comments or advances, or acts to traffic or otherwise directed against a person's sexuality using coercion by any person regardless of their relationship to the victim. So it is by any person regardless to their relationship to the victim in any setting, including but not limited to home and work. So it comprises anything that is related to the sexuality. Okay, any comments, any act. So what is this magnitude of this problem is 35% of women worldwide, they have experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence. And 1 in 20 women, it is reported to having, that means in the age group of 16 to 59, she has been reported of having been victim of one of the most, just 1 minute please. Sorry for disruption. So around 1 in 20 women, they have been reported having been victim of one of the most serious form of sexual offense. So what do you mean by serious sexual assault? So in UK, serious sexual assault means rape, either rape or assault by penetration, and or where the features of assault are aggravated, like such as abuse of position, use of drug or other substances, use of violence or use of weapon in the offense. So all these things comprises serious sexual offense. Okay, so it is not only rape but assault by penetration. So penetrations mean any orifices. Okay, and by anything. So I have given one question for you. So it comes as a assault by penetration. So because it is a same-sex women, correct? So same-sex partner, but it is without consent. So it doesn't fulfill the criteria for rape, but it comes as a assault by penetration. Now, only 11% of victims of serious sexual assault, they tell police about the incident. So other things goes unreported. Now, according to Sexual Offences Act 2003, what do you mean by sexual assault? So, it is a person intentionally touches another person. So, here the sex has not mentioned, it is not male or female. So, a person intentionally touches another person, the touching is sexual, and the person doesn't consent. So, these are the only three things. This comes under the Sexual Offence Act. Okay. So all these three, if they fulfill, so if you fulfill all these three criteria, it comes under sexual offense definition. And the maximum prison sentence for such sexual offense is 10 years. While serious sexual assault means when a person commits assault by penetration, that is, they intentionally penetrate the vagina or anus of another person with a part of the body or anything else without that person's consent. This encompasses the definition of rape, where the penetration of vagina, anus, or mouth of a person has occurred with a penis. So remember well, so rape is penetration of any orifices by a penis without consent, while assault by penetration is any orifice by any part, any body part or anything, okay, without a person's consent. And maximum sentence for the serious sexual offense is life imprisonment. So again, this is the same thing. I have given. So according to law, what comes is the definition of rape. So here a person A commits the offense of rape if he intentionally penetrates the vagina, anus, or mouth of another person, that means B person, with his penis, while B does not consent to the penetration and A does not reasonably believe that B consents. So see this third sentence where A, that is first person, does not reasonably believe that B consents. So what is meaning of this sentence? So whether the belief is reasonable, it is to be determined with regard to the all circumstances, including if any steps A has taken to ascertain whether B has given consent or not. Okay. Now, for what comes for the definition of rape under 13 years, child under 13 years. So now here consent doesn't matter. Okay. Child under 13 years, the consent doesn't matter. Here the only first two sentences of a definition comes into the force. So where the person intentionally penetrates the vagina, anus or mouth of another person with his penis and the other person is under 13 years. Here consent doesn't come into the picture. Okay. Under 13 years, any sexual any this thing, it comes under the rape even if the baby or the child gives consent. Okay. So this is regarding the child sexual abuse law. So a child does not become an adult until they reach their 18th birthday. The age of consent to sex is 16 years. So now see these two things. So age of consent to sex is 16 years according to UK law, but the child does not become an adult until they reach their 18th birthday. Now sexual activity under 13 years old is unlawful as they don't have a legal capacity to consent and it constitutes rape. Any sexual activity involving under 16 years old is unlawful, although the law takes into account the circumstances of peer-to-peer sex. Now, what do you mean by here peer-to-peer sex is? So, if the child has given consent, okay, and if she is the victim is under 16 years, okay, but more than 13 years, and if the partner, so age gap is not more than 3 years, and whether it is a consensual sexual act, then it does not uh, defined as a sexual offense. Okay, still it is unlawful, but it doesn't apply if the partner has given consent. Okay, and the age difference is not more than 3 years, then it doesn't come under the sexual offense. So now here the most important factor is absence of consent. It is the defining factor in the Sexual Offence Act 2003. Now the absence of consent means what? It can apply to one form of penetration even when there has been agreement to another. So vaginal penetration, anal penetration, oral penetration. If the consent was there for one form and not for other form, it can still amount as rape. Okay. Age of consent to any form of sexual activity is 16 years for both male and women. It is an offense for anyone to have any sexual activity with a person under the age of 16 years. But there is no intention to prosecute teenagers under the 16 years of age where both mutually agree and where they are of similar age. Now, what do you mean by similar ages? The age difference or age gap is less than 3 years. Now, how you manage a case of sexual assault. So, women who present after sexual assault, they should be fast-tracked to the appropriate healthcare professionals with minimal delays. The immediate need of the woman will be her protection and need for a place of safety, particularly if she knows the assailant. This is best achieved by involving the police, who can liaise with other agencies like social services and the housing department, so where they can provide shelter and the care to that person. Initial management, it includes basic history of that event like time, nature, and possible use of drug or alcohol. Also asking the victim to remember what happened, where it has happened, and with whom. It is vital to listen to the woman carefully and believe her account. The initial consultation, it should be sensitive and non-judgmental, because if this initial encounter is positive, it will help in future consultation. Now, this all consultation should be documented in woman's own words in the medical notes. So this is most important. It should be documented in woman's own words. careful documentation is essential as discrepancies in account of the assault can be used in court to discredit the case. The medical notes may be part of the evidence in the criminal justice process, and you may be asked to provide a statement and disclose notes. Okay, so here disclosure is allowed. Remember well. Okay. Now, how will you examine and manage the injuries? So here, basically, you should remember that the injuries are more likely to be seen on other body parts other than the genitalia. Okay, so injuries are more common on other body parts than the genitalia, while only 1/4 of women who present following sexual assault, they have genital injury. So only 25% will have genital injuries, while the injuries are more common on other body parts. All injuries should be treated with basic first aid, but the minor injuries which does not require suturing, they should not be cleaned initially because samples can be taken from these sites for DNA evidence. Injuries that are identified, they should be recorded accurately. Each injury should be described in the clinical notes, including the shape, depth, color, and tenderness. The type of injury should be noted like bruise, abrasion, or laceration. If you are unsure of any type of trauma, it is better to make a careful and concise description. If possible, you have to use a body diagram and a tape measure to measure the size of injury and distance from fixed anatomical landmarks. So this is how you will describe the injury. It is possible to take photograph, but it should be with written consent. Okay. So if you have to take the photograph, it should be with written consent. Now, if there are any concerns regarding sexual assault, it is important to make sure that the patient is not actively bleeding from the anogenital canal and there is no concealed bleeding. So you have to assess the patient's condition first. You should rule out that there is no any major external or internal hemorrhage. This is a particular concern if a patient reports a violent assault that includes any sharp or penetrating objects. Trauma to any significant arteries in genital tract, it can lead to hemorrhage, which can become life-threatening. So you should always exclude such type of injuries, and patient must be clinically stable before transfer to a forensic services initiated. Where the victim is not clinically stable, a forensic medical examiner or sexual offense examiner he should be able to attend the hospital to conduct the forensic examination. So the basic part is what you should remember from this thing is because it can come as EMQ. So if the patient is not stable, it is not that you are going to send her for forensic examination, but you have to stabilize her clinically. You have to rule out any major injuries. But yes, for minor injuries, it should not be cleaned or dressed. Okay. Then how you are going to take these evidences? So woman should be advised not to wash or wipe herself if she is considering a forensic medical examination. She should also not eat, drink, or pass urine prior to taking the evidence. Now this early evidence kit, it should be used to collect evidence and it should be available in emergency department. Now what do you mean by this early evidence kit? It was asked in the SB, I think in February exam or before that. So this early evidence kit is a sealed cardboard box. It contains plastic pot for urine sample, a toilet paper sample, a mouth swab, and mouth rinse. Okay, so these four are the contents of the early evidence kit. This was previously asked in the question SBA. Okay, women under drug or alcohol influence, they may have lost capacity. So in these circumstances, the collection of specimens should normally be deferred until the patient's capacity has returned. So if they are under intoxicating influence, you have to wait till they become capacity, so their mental capacity returns. Now, what do you mean by chain of evidence? So you have to maintain a chain of evidence. And what do you mean by this is? It is a legal concept used for all samples that may be used as evidence. So all samples taken, they should have an unbroken paper trail account. So what do you mean by that? So where and when the evidence was obtained, by whom, and any persons handling the sample, the places and condition of storage. This all should be documented with note of time, date, place, and signatures. So the documentation of all the events in correct chronological order. Okay, so this is called a chain of evidence and it should not be broken. So evidence what the evidence you are going to collect. So as I told you, early evidence kit, mouth swab, mouth rinse, urine sample for toxicology, and toilet paper. Okay. Clothing, any clothing removed from or by the victim should be transferred directly into an individual evidence bag, labeled and sealed. If removing clothing around wound, you should be cautious enough not to cut through the areas where the clothing has been damaged or ripped by these injuries. Okay, so you have to preserve those areas. If minor injuries are there, it should not be cleaned, dressed, or bandaged until the forensic samples are taken. So now, and what are the other things that you will preserve as evidence? So any sanitary ware, tampons, or diaphragm worn at the time of incidents, they should be preserved as evidence. Any speculum or vaginal packing used, it should be kept as evidence. Keep the condom used at the assault if the victim has it. When the surgical cleaning is required of the wound, better to use sterile water instead of chlorhexidine or iodine. If possible, advise victim not to shower or bath until the forensic examination has been done. Now, this is the important slide. Remember, forensic samples, what you have to take and within which time frame you have to take. So, penile oral penetration. So, for oral penetration, you have to take the samples within 48 hours or within 2 days. So, for oral, 2 days. For vaginal, 7 days. And for anal penetration, you have to take within 3 days. And it is for the penile penetration. Okay. So, oral 2 days, anal 3 days, and vaginal 7 days. Now, digital penetration, you have to take samples within 48 hours. And any skin swabs you have to take within 48 hours or up to 168 hours or up to 7 days if they are not washed. Okay, so this time frame you should remember. Now, how you are going to take these swabs? So the swabs are sterile cotton tip swabs. Okay, double non-sterile gloves, they are worn throughout the sampling process and when handling the specimen, in order to minimize the DNA transfer and contamination. Usually, 2 swabs are taken from the same area. On the surface of the body, the first swab is moistened with sterile water. Okay, so first swab should be moistened with sterile water and you have to take 2 swabs from each side. A buccal scrape from the inside of the woman's cheek is taken for the DNA sample or a reference sample as a DNA. Okay, so buccal swab should be taken in addition to all these swabs. Now, in case of alcohol and drugs, what forensic sample and up to how much time you can take? So, urine should be taken if the incidence has occurred within 5 days. Or if you are suspecting a drug facilitated sexual assault, you can take up to 14 days from the alleged assault. Okay, so urine for the drug and alcohol, it can be taken up to 5 days, or you are still thinking it is a drug facilitated, it can be still taken up to 14 days. And blood should be taken within 3 days. Okay, this is also SBA. So blood should be taken for alcohol and drug. It is for within 3 days or 72 hours. Now, what are the measures that you should carry to prevent the pregnancy? So, vaginal rape, it carries a 5% risk of pregnancy. It is also a question in one book. So, vaginal rape carries a 5% risk of pregnancy. So, if a reliable form of contraception is already not being used by the woman, all women should be offered EC. That is emergency contraception after vaginal rape. Now, how you are going to screen for STIs? So, most screening for STI should be done within 2 to 3 weeks after the assault. So, because of that incubation period of the pathogen. So, this was a question. This is a recall question this year, okay, this September. So, STI screening should be done within 2 to 3 weeks. Then, again at 3 months, blood test should be done to screen for hepatitis B, syphilis, and HIV. And if you are offering post-exposure prophylaxis, the HIV test should be done at 4 months. Okay, so STI screening should be at 2 to 3 weeks. HIV, HBsAg, and syphilis should be done at 3 months. Accelerated hepatitis B vaccine should be offered, that is 0-1 3 weeks or 0-1 2 months with a booster at 12 months. Vaccination will theoretically provide some protection if it is started up to 6 weeks after sexual assault. So you can give the vaccine. So first dose of vaccine, you can give up to 6 weeks. Still, it provides some protection. Now, regarding this post-exposure prophylaxis for HIV, so it should be discussed with every woman after the assault. Recommendation vary depending upon the type of exposure and risk factors. So risk factors are unprotected anal intercourse. Unprotected anal intercourse, it carries the highest risk. Other factors which increase the risk are a known positive HIV status of assailant, exchange of body fluids, presence of genital injuries, or multiple assailant assault. Also, it depends where the assailant is pursued from high risk group. Okay, like man from sub-Saharan Africa, a man who has sex with men, that is MSM, which is known as, or homosexuals, and if the man is intravenous drug abusers. So if the assailant is from high risk group, or there are high risk factors like man is HIV positive, the exchange of body fluids, the presence of genital injuries, or multiple assailants are there. This post-exposure prophylaxis, it should be started as soon as possible, but within 72 hours, and it should be continued for 4 weeks. Usually, the advice should be taken from GUM physician, that is genitourinary physician, with regard to commencement of post-exposure prophylaxis and follow-up. Now, which are the vulnerable population for the sexual assault? So, young, poor girls living in social housing, in poor health, single and separated or divorced, migrant or trafficked women, and those involved in sex industry, transgender people, vulnerable adults like those with mental health problems and learning difficulties. So this is the vulnerable groups. Now, how you follow up with the sexual assault people? So the follow-up appointment should be arranged before the starter pack of post-exposure prophylaxis finishes. That is within 3 to 5 days if it has been prescribed. Baseline blood tests are carried out in this initial appointment if not already done, and review should ascertain whether the woman wishes to continue this post-exposure prophylaxis, also any adverse effects and compliance with this post-exposure prophylaxis. And then it is weekly appointments or 2 weekly appointments. That is, if problems are there, weekly appointment. If there is no problem, 2 weekly follow-up appointment until this post-exposure prophylaxis is completed. Pregnancy testing might be necessary after 3 weeks.
Excuse me,
Yes.
sorry to disturb you.
Yeah.
In case the victim is not on Pepsi, then what is the follow-up recommendation in case we have not started post-exposure prophylaxis?
Then no need to follow for this thing actually for Pepsi. But yes, one thing is that pregnancy test at 3 weeks. Okay, and with this STI screening as around 2 to 3 weeks and 3 months blood testing. These are to be done.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
If the Pepsi is not there. Okay, and mental health assessment. So long-term psychological effects of the sexual assault. These include depression, anxiety, PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder, drug and substance misuse, self-harm, and suicide. So these rape victims are more likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder than victims of any other crime. So what are the signs and symptoms of this post-traumatic stress disorder? So re-experiencing the incidents in the form of flashbacks or nightmares, avoidance of reminders of the assault, hyperarousal with effects including difficulty in concentrating, irritability, and sleep problems, emotional numbing, meaning lack of ability to experience the feeling. So these are the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now there is one thing in this talk they have discussed, that is the SARC. SARC means Sexual Assault Referral Center. It is a model of service dedicated to addressing the forensic, evidential, and aftercare need of sexual assault. So this works as a multi-agency partnership to improve health outcome, also criminal justice outcome of the victims of rape or sexual assault. So you can say it is a one-stop clinic. Okay, so SARC is a one-stop clinic where there will be hospital services, availability of forensic examination, round the clock, that is 24 hours, facilities for non-police referrals, crisis work to support the victim, immediate aftercare like emergency contraception and post-exposure prophylaxis, and follow-up services and psychosocial support. So it is a one-stop clinic with all facilities that are required for the sexual assault victims. So this SARC, and another advantage of SARC is it may offer a forensic medical examination with collection of DNA and other evidence without police being involved. Like what happens with sexual assault is sometimes the victim may not want to lodge a complaint. Okay? They have not yet decided whether to lodge the complaint or not. So here the SARC clinic can offer to collect the evidence without involving the police, and they till the victim can decide afterwards to lodge the complaints. So in that case, this evidence collected will be helpful. Okay, so this is the major advantage of the SARC clinics. So this is the immediate management checklist of this sexual assault. So it is be sensitive and empathetic, maintain the patient's dignity and respect their wishes, provide an appropriate environment for history tracking and examination, assess for acute mental health concerns, assess injuries, treat serious or potentially serious injuries, offer emergency contraceptive, offer post-exposure prophylaxis for HIV, offer hepatitis B vaccination, seek consent from the patient, refer to your local SARC. Okay. If the patient declines referral to SARC, refer to local GUM clinic for screening, and refer to other support services if the patient is in agreement. So this is in short regarding this sexual assault. Okay, and I have combined both, that is talk and even this thing, a strategy also. So these are the questions you can type in your chat box. So the woman who had just reported that she has been assaulted sexually by someone she knows, what would be the immediate needs of the woman? Yes, very good. So answer is C. Her protection and need for a place of safety is the immediate needs of the woman. Here they have not asked what are the these. They have asked immediate needs of the woman, and they have not asked immediate management. Okay. There is a suspicion of serious sexual assault on a 30 years old bar woman was drug facilitated. Up to when after the assault can a blood sample be taken for forensic test? Yes. Answer is C here. See, blood sample you have to take within 3 days, while urine sample you can, if you are suspecting it is drug facilitated, you can take up to 14 days. Okay, and if not, you can take within how many days? 5 days or 7 days? Yes.
7 days.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the recall question this September. So when STI screening should be done after sexual assault? STI screening. So STI screening should be done 2 to 3 weeks, not 2 to 3 days. It is 14 to 21 days. Answer is D. Okay. It's 2 to 3 weeks. Answer is D. So these are the some questions regarding sexual assault. So thank you all for attending. Bye for today. Tomorrow we will do another talk. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.